Hey guys, AllSports83 here with another edition of XFL Casual, and today I'm going to be doing a quick preview of each team from a casual perspective in hopes to get you excited for the new upcoming XFL season. In this two-part video series, I'm going to highlight for each team things I'm looking forward to, what I think make them an interesting watch, including some player spotlights. Finally, I'm going to make some predictions. I want to do something a little different, so I'm going to predict each team's best suited rivalry in the league. Then, of course, I'll predict some season records and the finish in the division. As always, this is just my opinion, and there will be a lot of guesswork here since there's really nothing that's happened on the field just yet. Naturally, you're welcome to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Lastly, before we get started, things are changing fast and teams are cutting players, so I apologize in advance if some names I mention won't make the final roster or they're already gone from the team at the time of viewing this video. I do call it XFL Casual for a reason, and I'm just trying to contribute and talk about things that I want to see for the upcoming season. I hope that makes a lot of sense, and hopefully that covers my bases. Anyway, let's get started with today's discussion. Starting with the St. Louis Battlehawks, we're kicking things off with a bang because this is a team I think will have a lot of support in the XFL this year and moving forward. I've stated before that fan interest was among the highest in 2020, and I have no reason to doubt that folks will be lined up to support Battlehawk Blue this time around as well. Now, there are plenty of unknowns for this team headed into the new XFL, and while I'm excited about Anthony Becht as a head coach, he has limited experience as a coach, and there's no way of knowing at this point if he's really up to the challenge. Based on what I've seen from Becht so far, I'd say that he's a player's coach. He carries a positive attitude and has really embraced being a coach and embraced the XFL as a whole, sort of becoming a spokesman for the league. I do think it helps that he has an offensive mind as a former tight end, and I'd be shocked if tight ends weren't featured heavily in this offense. Speaking of offense, let's highlight a few players to keep an eye on this season, starting with quarterback A.J. McCarron. He will likely be the Week 1 starter for St. Louis. Having some playing time with the Cincinnati Bengals, McCarron was pretty decent. For me, the two stats to keep an eye on for quarterbacks is completion percentage and touchdown to interception ratio. Those numbers were respectable for McCarron in his limited stats in the NFL. He had a 62% completion rate and 6 TDs with 3 interceptions. It may be a small sampling, but these are numbers that suggest that A.J. McCarron could lead the Battlehawks to success in 2023. Another player that I want to highlight for this team is running back Leddie Brown. Many may not be familiar with Brown, and I'm sure he's going to have to fight to get on the field this season, but I know him from his college days at WVU. While his overall numbers aren't staggering, let me add some context by saying that Brown played on an offense that struggled in the run game and was pass-happy during his college career. In spite of that fact, Brown was arguably the best player with an average 4.7 yards per carry and 27 career touchdowns. He also eclipsed the 1,000 yards per season in his last 2 years at West Virginia. Based on what I've seen, Leddie Brown could turn into a production machine for the Battlehawks if given the opportunity. Wide receiver Marcel Aitman is another player I would like to see produce for St. Louis. He broke out his senior year in Oklahoma State with over 1,000 yards receiving and 8 touchdowns. He had some limited time with the Raiders in the NFL, but Aitman has a large 6 foot 4 inch stature that could give him an advantage on the field. Now, what's a team preview without some predictions? My first prediction is all about rivalries. I'm going to be doing this for every team, and for the St. Louis Battlehawks, I believe it's the DC Defenders. Both teams are in the North Division. It's red versus blue, which is pretty common, and both are holdovers from 2020's East Division of the XFL. It really just makes sense. I mean, I could see the Battlehawks striking up a cross-division rivalry with, say, the San Antonio Brahmas as well. But if it's one team that will make the best arch nemesis, it's definitely the DC Defenders for me. I'll be looking forward to this matchup both times each season. As for the 2023 season, this is a shot in the dark, but it may be an uphill climb for St. Louis, and I predict that they will finish third in the North Division with a record of 5-5. Every other team in the division looked pretty strong, and they looked to beat up on each other all season. But only time will tell. Next up is the Vegas Vipers, and I'm going to say out of the gate that this roster overall could be good enough to win a championship this season. Starting at the top with head coach Rod Woodson, not only does he have that legendary NFL career, but he has been on several coaching staffs in the NFL, including the Bengals, Raiders, and Broncos. So far, the biggest hiccup for the Vipers has been landing a home for them to play in their games. They have found a Band-Aid for now in Cashman Field, but it will need some TLC before the Vipers play their home opener, scheduled for, I think it's February 25th. Attendance for Vipers games is still a big mystery, but there is plenty to like about this team. Personally, I love the team colors and the overall look. And for 2023, this is a roster worth taking note, especially with the receiving group. Speaking of players, let's do some highlights. I was going to start with quarterback Brian Scott, but as I was editing this video, I found out that he has separated from the team. So now we look like we have a more quarterback battle on our hands. It'll probably go to the new quarterback, Brett Huntley, but I wouldn't count out Perez or McClendon. Whoever's throwing the ball for the Vipers, it's not going to be a bad thing who they're throwing to. It looks like this is the strongest wide receiver group in the entire XFL, with names like Jeff Badette, who's found success in spring football in the past, and Saeed Blacknall. But the big name here is Martavis Bryant. I don't have to spend a lot of time talking about Bryant. Any casual football fan is going to know all about his success in the NFL, and he is a big draw for the XFL, and I think he could be really exciting to watch this season. As for running back, I have my eye on Rod Smith, who spent significant time with the Dallas Cowboys from 2015 to 2018. While Smith was never a feature back, his NFL experience may prove as an edge for the Vipers' running back lineup, and he could emerge as a veteran leader to create high production on the field. Predicting who could be the Vipers' biggest rivalry was an easy one for me, regardless if I'm right. It's the Seattle Sea Dragons. Seattle and Vegas are the two only teams that are truly out west, and both teams will want to be king of the region. Clearly, being in the same division and facing each other twice a year helps encourage a rivalry here, and one that I'm going to be excited to watch now and in the future. So with all of my talk about a strong roster, you might think that I would have the Vipers held very high in the division. But honestly, I think the loss of Brian Scott and a new turn on this quarterback thing, I think really hurts the Vipers going into the season. And so I have put them finishing fourth in the division with a 5-5 record. Winning would certainly help get fans to an old, made-for-baseball stadium in Vegas, and I think the Vipers have a roster to do that, with the exception of the quarterback. So I think it could be a struggle for them this season, but we'll find out if I'm right or wrong. Another popular and successful team in 2020 was the DC Defenders. The crowds were almost at capacity at Audi Field, and there was a quick tradition forming with some clear plastic cups, which only added to the atmosphere all around. More importantly, the play on the field wasn't too bad either, and I think we'll see a similar result for the 2023 season. Head coach Reggie Barlow doesn't have a ton of head coaching experience, but it should be encouraging to Defender fans that he has a track record of working with quarterbacks, so it's hard to imagine he doesn't have the mind to be successful as a coach in the XFL. Obviously, the quarterback to watch here for the Defenders is Jordan Ta'amu, who has a proven record of success in spring football. Many believe Ta'amu took a step back in the USFL for 2022, but it's important to keep in mind that while he didn't look the same as he did in 2020 with the Battlehawks in the XFL, he still managed to lead the league in passing yards with 2015 and touchdowns with 14. Yes, he also had 12 interceptions, but I kind of felt this sense that the Tampa Bay Bandits were putting the entire team on his shoulders because of the success that he enjoyed in St. Louis in 2020. Now, with an offensive-minded coach, I really think Jordan Ta'amu will share some of the same success that we saw in XFL 2.0. I like Brian Herrien as the running back to look out for in DC. He may not have a lot of tape or experience, but he does run tough for a smaller guy. It's probably the top end speed that has kept him from an NFL roster position, but he certainly has the ability to get chunk yards and keep the offense on the field with his vision and brutality at the point of attack. Wide receiver KD Cannon is a guy who needs an opportunity in the form of spring football in the XFL. He had great numbers at Baylor, considering he was the number 2 wide receiver on the team. Then he kept getting signed and cut by NFL teams as he tried to make his way into the pros. After finally landing a roster spot in 2020 with the Seattle Dragons in the XFL, the season was cut short. If Cannon can recapture anything close to his production in college, the defenders will be in pretty good shape. So I'm excited to see what happens with the former Baylor Bear. I've already mentioned that the St. Louis Battlehawks serve as the biggest rival for the defenders. At least that's the way I see it. Another reason for this is both fan bases were large and supportive in 2020 for their teams. Now, baked into this story is that the defenders have a quarterback that used to play for the Battlehawks. It doesn't really matter how Te'amu has ended up in D.C. The St. Louis fans loved seeing him in Battlehawk blue. So I can see some bitterness adding to this matchup, and it could continue to spark this rivalry. So just a guess, but I like the defenders to win the North Division with a 7-3 record. It feels like they have one of the better quarterbacks in the league. The roster looks pretty solid overall, and I sense they have real home field advantage with a loyal fan base. I know I'm excited to see games in DC with that crowd. Even though it's a total guess, I'd be shocked if they don't have a winning record and represent the XFL in the North Division in 2023. The Seattle Sea Dragons were both a struggling team and a popular market for the XFL in 2020. So other than some tweaks to the team name and uniform, we have another holdover from XFL 2.0, and for good reason. Seattle has proven to be a football city, and this team was one of the few that could actually fill a respectable crowd in a current NFL stadium in Lumen Field. They hope to do the same in 2023 and moving forward. It certainly helps that the Sea Dragons have arguably the only 1-2 punch in the coaching department, starting with head coach Jim Haslett. Any football fan knows Haslett as an experienced NFL coach headlined by his 6 years as the head coach for the New Orleans Saints in the mid to early 2000s. Where Haslett is the defensive mastermind, the second punch comes from Seattle's offensive coordinator, June Jones. We last saw Jones as the head coach of 2020's Houston Roughnecks in the XFL, where they were the last remaining undefeated team before the season came to an abrupt conclusion. Jones was the talk of the coaching town during those 5 weeks in the XFL, and now looks to bring that same offensive bravado to the Seattle Sea Dragons this season. And I'd say Haslett and Jones have some weapons to work with, starting with my highlighted quarterback, Ben DiNucci. While his short stint with the Cowboys in 2020 wasn't groundbreaking, he is only one of 2 XFL quarterbacks with regular season experience. So I look for DiNucci to rebrand himself, and this is the perfect opportunity to do it. We'll see if he can win the starting job and capitalize on such an opportunity. My running back spotlight for the Seattle Sea Dragons is Cameron Harris. First, he averaged over 5 yards per carry all 3 years with the Miami Hurricanes. His short, stocky build can help him get yards after contact, and he's deceptively fast at the top end. It doesn't hurt that Harris is young and fresh. He has no pro experience, but could make the XFL a long-term success, which isn't a half-bad way to make a living. I feel he could really produce in the XFL, and we may just see him get a chance to do that right out of the gate this season. Okay, everyone knows who Josh Gordon is, and he is one of the most talked about wide receivers in the XFL this year, and for good reason. The only real concern for Gordon is the off-the-field stuff. When Gordon has his pads and helmet on, he can be the best wideout in the league, and that's why the Sea Dragons have taken a chance on him. I sure hope things go well, because Gordon brings a star power to the XFL in the here and the now. Wanting to own the West, I think the best rivalry for the Sea Dragons is the Vegas Vipers, as I've said. And I think the Seattle has this edge right out of the gate. They have a proven fan base, a ton of coaching experience, and some real stars on the team. To do all that, I have the Sea Dragons finishing second in the North with a 6-4 record. For me, June Jones's offense alone makes them feel like a playoff team. I may be overreacting, but things look really good on paper for Seattle. And so there you have it. There is my breakdown for the XFL North Division for part 1 of this video. Be looking out for part number 2, where I cover the South Division of the XFL, where we'll take a look at the Arlington Renegades, Houston Roughnecks, Orlando Guardians, and San Antonio Brahmas. Again, let me know what you think in the comments. Do you agree with my assessment? Give me your predictions. Who do you think the best rivals are going to be? And what do you think the finishing records are going to be for each team? Let me know what you think. I look forward to hearing them. Until then, have a good one.